All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're building a rock-solid understanding of one of spoken English's most crucial and, honestly, most commonly misunderstood tools. If you're learning the nuances of the English language, you quickly realize there are just certain structural pillars you simply cannot ignore. So today, we're taking our source material and breaking down exactly how to master the modal verb have to. We're going to look at its core meaning, how it functions mechanically, and how it completely differs from other words that might seem similar but actually carry a totally different weight. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll meet the modal verb, then tackle have to versus must, map out the present forms, learn to ask questions, avoid some common mistakes, and finish up with some fantastic idioms and vocabulary. Let's start right at the beginning. Section 1, meet the modal verb. So what exactly is a modal verb? I mean, you hear grammar folks throw this term around all the time, and it sounds incredibly technical, right? But honestly, it's a very practical, everyday concept that you are probably already using constantly without even realizing it. Basically, a modal verb is just a helper word. It colors the meaning of your sentence. Instead of just stating a plain, boring fact, a modal expression is used to show things like necessity, obligation, possibility, ability, permission, or advice. Some classic examples from our source text include words like can, could, should, must, and of course, the absolute star of our explainer today, have to. They attach themselves to a main verb and literally instantly change the entire tone of the sentence. So the absolutely crucial point here is that when you drop have to into a sentence, you are telling the world that something is totally required. It means there is zero choice in the matter. A specific rule, a duty, or a situation has made something completely necessary. For instance, if you say, I have to pay my taxes, you're saying paying taxes is a hard, unavoidable requirement. Or if you say, she has to complete her homework, completing that homework is a hard requirement. You are strictly bound by obligation. Moving right along to section 2, have to versus must. Okay. This distinction right here is the absolute key to mastering these words, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. Must usually comes internally from the speaker themselves. It represents advice or a really strong opinion. So if a teacher says, you must study harder, that is their strong personal advice to you. Have to, on the other hand, comes from rules, responsibilities, or external circumstances. For example, I have to wear a uniform at school. The school rule requires it, right? It's an external force dictating your actions, not just a strong piece of advice from a friend. All right, section 3, the present forms. Let's look at how to actually build these sentences. Now notice how the verb changes from have to has to, depending entirely on the subject of your sentence. It's a simple mechanical shift, but it's super important. If your subject is I, you, we, or they, you pair it with have to, followed by the base first form of the verb. So, we have to attend class. But if your subject is third person singular, he, she, or it, the helper shifts. You use has to, like he has to work, or it has to be fixed. The main verb stays in that basic first form, but the modal helper adjusts to fit the subject. And these positive forms are absolutely perfect for describing the unbending rules of our daily lives. Our source material categorizes their usage into 3 really clear buckets. First up, rules, like drivers have to follow traffic laws. Then there are responsibilities, like I have to complete my homework. And finally, daily obligations. You know, those routines we just can't escape, such as he has to catch the bus. But wait, here is where things get really fascinating, and honestly, where a lot of students trip up. Don't fall into this common trap. A lot of people think don't have to means the exact same thing as mustn't. That is entirely incorrect. A negative have to is actually a pretty liberating thing because it means the action is not necessary. It means you actually have a choice. You can do it if you want to, but literally no one is requiring you to do it. Think about the implied meaning of a simple sentence like, you don't have to come tomorrow. It does not mean you are banned from coming. It doesn't mean you're going to be in trouble if you show up. It simply means that coming tomorrow is completely optional. The obligation has been totally removed. Building on that, the formula for the present negative follows a very similar pattern to the positive form. Just like before, your helper verb shifts based on the subject. For I, you, we, and they, you use don't have to. Like, we don't have to wear uniforms. For he, she, and it, you use doesn't have to. She doesn't have to attend class. And notice this, it's crucial. Once you use doesn't, the modal reverts right back to the base have to. You would never say doesn't has to. It is always doesn't have to. Next up, Section 4, Asking Questions. The secret code here for asking questions is simply placing do or does right at the front of the sentence to flip it into an inquiry. So the formula is do or does plus your subject plus have to plus your base verb. Do you have to study tonight? If the subject is third person singular, we just swap do for does. Does she have to attend class? And once again, just like in the negative form, because we're using does at the beginning, we stick with have to in the middle. Never ever has to. All right, Section 5, Avoiding Common Mistakes. Let's troubleshoot some errors. Even advanced speakers can stumble on these mechanics, so the most critical takeaway here is remembering exactly how the verb interacts with singular subjects. If you look at the wrong side, the mistake is forgetting to shift to has for he or she. You can't say, she have to study. You've got to remember to shift it to, she has to study. And as we literally just discussed, the trickiest one by far is the question format. Does she has to go is grammatically incorrect. Because the word does already handles the third person singular tense, the have just stays in its base form. So the correct phrasing is always, does she have to go? And finally, Section 6, Idioms and Vocabulary. Time to polish up that conversational toolkit. These idioms from our source material are absolutely fantastic for describing the kinds of obligations we've been talking about today. Think about it. When you have to finish a project by 5 p.m., you are working against the clock because of a strict time limit. Or maybe you have a responsibility you just have to come to grips with, meaning you need to accept and deal with the difficult situation. And when it comes to rules, well, you might have to draw the line to set a firm limit on what is acceptable behavior. Similarly, notice how this higher-level vocabulary naturally pairs with the everyday realities of what we have to do. If you have a ton of obligations, you literally have to learn to cope with pressure. If you break a rule, you might have to justify your decision by providing a really good reason. Security guards have to remain vigilant, meaning they must be watchful and alert at all times. Using words like this elevates your English from simply stating a rule to providing complex, mature descriptions of exactly how we navigate our daily responsibilities. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a second and think about your own day. Apply these building blocks to your life right now. What is one obligation you have to do today? And more importantly, how would you describe it using phrases like against the clock or coping with pressure? Remember, mastering these tiny modal helper words doesn't just fix your grammar, it completely transforms how confidently you present yourself to the world. Thanks for joining me on this explainer and keep pushing those language skills forward.